Alright, welcome to a features and overview on an AiM MXM drag boat kit for a carbureted drag boat. Let's go ahead and power on the system. So it's going to go through the splash screen here that's configurable. It's going to show you if there's a nearby track and it connects to some satellites. It's going to say it's selecting that track configuration for a boat application, not really that useful. We're indoors, so it's going to have low satellite reception in general. So you can see here, this is GPS speed, and there's as it's gaining lock on some of the satellites that it can do from indoors, you'll see that this number won't be exactly 0, but it'll be fairly close. So the sensors that this kit comes with are a water temp sensor here, so that is going to plug in here to, we'll bring that up on the screen in a moment. So you can see here the water temp will connect to channel 2, the water pressure will connect to channel 1, and the water temp comes with 2 different sizes here of kind of hose fittings. So you can see the way that that sits inside the hose here. It's just a billet fitting. So if you need a smaller one, there's 2 included. For the water pressure sensor, this is all pre-configured. Both of these threads are 1/8 NPT, so this will just thread into a hole on the block for a pre-existing water pressure sensor if you have an analog gauge, or you might have to thread an extra hole, drill and tap an extra hole if you don't have one currently, but this is just 1/8 NPT, so this isn't plugged in, it's just loose. That's why the pressure, when we get to it, you'll see. There's a throttle position sensor as well, and we'll discuss why this is important for doing testing and measuring times to distance. And it comes with the stationary part here that mounts to, it doesn't really matter which side you mount it to, but in general, you mount this to the actual, this side right here. You'll be mounting to the pedal that's moving, and then the stationary part here, which has a magnet, you'll be mounting to kind of the throttle stop on the foot pedal. So you can see the live TPS reading here, and we'll talk about that in a second. The final thing is a trim potentiometer, which I'll show you in person, but that will be mounted to the mid, or if you have a push-pull cable on the mid already, you can mount it directly to the push-pull cable inside the boat, and that'll show you your trim position here on the screen as well. So we'll go through and look at the live readings here. So these are the sensor input data here. So we have TPS, we have water temp, we have water pressure, and we also have trim here. Okay, so all the sensors aren't plugged in with the exception of the TPS here. So I'll show you how that works in a second. So as you bring these two closer together, there's a magnetic field that it's going to actually show 100 when they're touching, and as you move further away, this will take some calibration to actually get it to correlate to the throttle position of the actual motor. This is kind of just pedal position for an average hot foot, but it'll basically tell you when they're touching that's 100% throttle. And the reason that that's kind of important is the data logger will be set up so that it's only recording when you're above 80% throttle and the engine is running. Okay, so we'll simulate that now. And the reason why it's important is the following. So I will show you, let's just say that the motor is going 7,500 RPM here. We're kind of going to be simulating that, so you can see on the screen the LEDs lit up and the bar graph lit up. Once again, all of this is configurable. And then we're going to bring the TPS as if you were going full throttle on a drag pass. Okay, so we'll bring it close here. You can see it's almost 100, and then we'll wait approximately 10 seconds and then back off. Okay, and the reason this is important is now if you click memory or you move, or say you shut the engine off, so we'll say stop forcing channel value here. So when we click memory, we're going to be able to see that we actually had the throttle pedal depressed for approximately 14 seconds here, and our max speed was 7,500 RPM. Our max speed was 1.5 miles an hour because we were indoors. So this is really powerful because every single time, if you have two distance markers on the water, that you basically just floor it when you hit the first distance marker, and it's going to measure the exact amount of time right, and give you the info right on the screen here that you had the throttle wide open, okay, with the motor running, obviously. So that's powerful because it eliminates all kind of the garbage data around each of the drag runs when you go into Race Studio and analyze the data. So that's going to make it a lot easier to analyze your data because you're only looking at when the throttle's wide open. On the style of boat that you're using this on, you probably won't run into a lot of issues idling around or part throttle. So that makes life a lot easier. You still see everything on the screen and all the warnings get displayed. If you have low water pressure or the water temp gets too high, all of that will still get displayed properly. But this number will show you how long you had the throttle depressed. The important thing to note is there's 3 seconds that are added as a buffer, so half before, half after, to the data log. So this number is actually 3 seconds longer than you held the throttle open. It doesn't really matter because you're not going to be using this as like a time per se or a time slip. You're just going to be comparing this number for a measured distance to one another. So for comparison purposes, it works great. And it'll actually show your top speed and max RPM here for each run. So we'll do this again, and go back to the main screen here by clicking view. So we'll do this again, and now we're going to change the RPM. Let's say we're going to get up to 8,200 RPM. Once again, all this is configurable in terms of the warning lights here. So we're going to have simulating 2 runs now. So let's say we have this. So this is going to be a short run here. Let's say lots of power. Okay, we back off, and then we're going to circle back around, drive back to the beginning of the course, or the 2 markers that we have set up, and then we're going to come back and we're going to floor it again. This one we're going to go a little bit slower, let's say, so hold it a little bit longer, and then we'll back off. So the important thing here now is when we click memory, you can see that the run that we had here was 17.7 seconds. And we can actually go through and look at all the data. Obviously, because we're not running this on an engine, not terribly interesting, but you could see the RPM and the speed right here on the screen if you were didn't want to use a computer. So you can look at everything here and actually step through here by clicking next and previous. You can go through each data point individually in tenth of a second increments, and you can see the temperatures as well. So that hopefully makes some sense there. We'll go back to tests. So you have 3 tests here that we did, and then each of these represent one time that we went full throttle. So this one was 11 seconds, which I said was a little bit shorter, also 8,200 RPM. So you can see each of those runs will get separated here into different files, and you don't even need a computer to look at this. That's why it's so easy to use from that perspective with the throttle position sensor. This is really what makes it a lot easier to use. You can trigger trim timers and stuff like that off of this if you'd like, but that takes a little bit of configuration, and you need to test with it first so that we know kind of what an optimum trim setting is and record the data for that. So that makes some sense there. You might have noticed, we'll go back to the kind of the home screen here. So the things that are getting shown on the screen here are battery voltage, throttle position. So we have 11.8 battery volts here. I just have an adapter plugged into the wall here. This is the RPM. This is the GPS speed indoors, so you can see how much it's fluctuating. If we go closer to the window, it would be much better. And the throttle position sensor shows negative because we obviously have this super far away. As we get closer, you can see how that shows positive. So we'll go to the next screen. If you just want to go and do speed runs, let's say this is your trim, which is the number one thing you probably want to stare at. So it'll show your trim indicator and then your speed here, or RPM and speed, kind of similar to what you'd get on a normal type digital display. Then we have water pressure. If you click view, this just cycles between all the screens. trim, speed, and water temp. So these two gauges or sensors aren't plugged in, so it's not showing anything, but once you plug them in, it'll show the correct readings for that. So that's all the screens that are configured here. Obviously, there's a lot more opportunity to configure in the software if you want anything else. Now for the warning lights, we're going to simulate a few things. The one on the left is the water temp, and the one on the right is actually for your trap speed coming into the starting gates. Okay, so they're all freely configurable to do whatever you want, but because the water temp here, we'll show you what it is in a second, is not plugged in, so it's showing negative 490. Anything below 82 degrees Fahrenheit, it's going to have a blue light here to show you that your water temp is cold. Once you get above that, so let's say we're at 95, that light will go away. Okay, so now we're at 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's say you heat up the motor a little bit. The motor probably should run in 100 to 120 Fahrenheit range, depending on how fast you're going and your water pump health. So we can, let's say 125. It's going to say, okay, that's a little bit warm. Let's trigger a yellow warning light here. If we go above that and actually start overheating the engine, let's say 100 and anything above 150, so let's say 155, it's going to go red. And then once you start to get really dangerous, let's say above 160, so we'll say 165, and it's going to flash red. So that's warning you in stages about your water temp there. The one on the right, we can't actually simulate here indoors because the speed is what it is, but I can show you on the screen here what it does if we go to shift lights and alarms. So when you have the throttle depressed less than 30% and you're going less than 7 miles an hour, meaning you're too slow for the entry-level trap speed, the one on the right is going to tell you, okay, blue, it's a different blue from what's on the left, so you don't get confused, but it means that you're going too slow into the entry gate. So without looking at this number here, because this number might be a little bit hard to see with the vibration and just the fact that you're wearing a helmet, the light might be a lot easier. So you can see that, okay, if it's blue, it means you're going less than 7 miles an hour. If it's green here, it means you're going between 7 and 8 miles an hour. Okay, so when it's green, it means you're kind of trying to target it between there, that it's going to stay green. If you're going higher than 8 miles an hour, between 8 and 9, it's going to turn to amber. Okay, and it's going to flash amber if you're higher than 9, meaning that you need to really slow down. You're going to get kind of red flagged. So those are the kind of baseline settings that I provided with you to you in the configuration file for this. I just made this video as kind of an overview so that you have it as a reference if you want to change anything. But everything's freely configurable. If you want to change the shift lights here, they're currently between 6,000 and 8,000. We'll shut that down here by stopping the channel value, and you can see we still have the water temp as being high, so we'll stop forcing that. And yeah, that basically summarizes all the functionality of the device. Just some menu items here. You can connect to it via Wi-Fi or via USB. You can password protect the Wi-Fi. If you download the Ray Studio 3 software and you open it up, you plug in the USB cable and you can actually connect to it here and change everything that you want in terms of the password for the Wi-Fi. So you can add that here and then click transmit to transmit to the device itself. And then from there on, you can just connect to it like a normal Wi-Fi network, and you never have to look around for a USB cable that you may have misplaced. Other than that, we can go over to, you can change the backlight here if you'd like to different colors. So we'll cycle through those now. So white, purple, red, green, yellow, blue, magenta, cyan, back to white. White's probably the easiest to see in the sunlight. The other thing that's interesting is counters. So right now, because we've been integrating some time here over the course of simulating that RPM, we have 6 miles on the odometer, but we can actually reset all of these if you want. So I've just configured this to be 2021 season, which is actually activated now. So it's a running hour meter and odometer. So as soon as you start recording with an RPM signal, it's going to actually detect how much time you have on the particular motor or boat you have this installed in. And you can just switch between these as the seasons go on. And the total odometer is at the top here. Other than that, that pretty much describes everything. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Just send me an email or a message, and I'd be be more than happy to get back to you. Thanks, and see you soon.